Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. So, guys, we're going to take a look into pantheism and also into just what's going on in our world and how we've just completely lost sight as a society as to the greater picture. And so, there are many who would scoff at the idea of calling the earth Gaia and giving it a name, giving her a name, as we tend to think of the earth in a feminine point of view. And it's kind of natural when you look at it. So when we look at like Taoism, for instance, we see there's the opposite polarities that are in balance and in harmony, always ebbing and flowing one to the other, part of a greater whole. And we've lost that picture of being part of a greater whole. And part of it is simply just that feeling of, and I'm not even going to say reverence, but just that feeling of the sanctity and the specialness of nature and what it really is, and the fact that we are a part of nature. And so nature is alive, and we could see the reflection of the individual, again, the microcosm with the macrocosm, the individual with the whole. And as you see here on the left, this is what a thin slice of a mouse's brain looks like. So the image above shows 3 neuron cells on the left, 2 red and 1 yellow, and their connections. Well, this is a snapshot of the universe. And you see clusters of galaxies. They are a reflection of each other. And there are countless things we can see this reflection in. So when you look at yourself, realize that you are a universe, and you have something that's called the microbiome. Well, for one, the human body is made up of about 37 trillion cells. And how big is the microbiome? It's even bigger than that. So the microbiome is bacteria and fungus that live inside your body, viruses as well. And, it's debatable whether viruses are alive. Most would say, nope, they're not alive, they're inert. But they do cause mutation, so they do have a purpose of sorts in the greater scheme of thing. But when you look at this, that's an immense number of things that make up you. So you are, in effect, not really a singular being. You are like the earth itself. And we have lost that sense of being part of something greater, and that is really at the root of what we see going wrong in this world. Because we are acting much more like a virus, like a plague upon the earth, with absolute disdain for the earth and the sanctity of the earth itself. There's no respect for the other creatures living on the earth, and there's no respect for the health, the well-being of the earth itself. So what has brought this about? Well, it's pretty obvious. It's the system that we have. It's the system that is greedy and self-centered and based on, it's based on greed. It's based on conquering. It's based on taking. It's based on the thought of personal ownership. Well, can any one of your trillions of cells say they own the entire body? Can they lay stake to a different place from where they're at? Can they even claim where they're at in the body, whether it's a liver cell, a stomach cell, a brain cell? It's just kind of a ridiculous idea, is it not? And yet, is that not what humans are doing to the earth as we see it? And we're poisoning it and destroying it. And this really comes from the top. This is the system that we have been brainwashed into. And it is brainwashing. It's conditioning. Here in the Western world, we're taught to think as capitalists. Capitalism is good. Materialism is good. That's what you're sold. Keep up with the Joneses. You need a bigger car. You need to have 2 cars. You need to have a nice big house. 1,000 square feet's not big enough. You need bigger, better, more greed. And so, we have a society that is extremely sick and unhealthy, and it's killing everything around it. And this society, we could trace it back to the Roman Empire and even back farther than that. Does it come out of Babylon, perhaps? Does it come out of Sumeria? We've talked about in other videos how it's just changed, and how they control us through our politics. They control us through our religion. They get us to do evil things, things that are evil and destructive, with the thoughts of, reward in the afterlife, or you're doing this in the service of God, or you're doing this to free other people, when it couldn't be anything farther from the truth. The reason why it's all being done is just to consolidate the wealth into the hands of the few, consolidate the power into the hands of the few, because that is what we have now. We have more disparity, more inequality than we've ever had at any time in history. We could trace it back to the conquistadors, also the other people that came from Europe and basically came over into the Americas and slaughtered 100 million people or more, and brought their diseases over to them and forced them into this way of life. This way of life, which is, led to, as we said, countless slaughter, conquer in the name of Christ, or, hey, they're going to go to hell anyway, eternally damned, so we might as well get rid of them and take their possessions. And this goes back to the Old Testament as well. And it's very painful, and many people don't want to acknowledge this. As often is the case, people want to see themselves as the persecuted instead of what's really happening here. And it was, a complete atrocity what happened to the natives, and also through the Inquisition as well. It's a case of you have to submit to the machine, this machine which rules the world right now completely, and has so lost sight of the fact that we are all individual cells living in the body as something bigger. And so truly, this is insanity when we see what has happened. How many of us as kids were brought up in the old days thinking that, it's cowboys versus Indians, and the cowboys were the good guys. And can we look at things without ego? Is that possible? Because so many things are ego, and it's ego that's cultivated. It's cultivated through pride. To me, it's always hit me as, just so obvious when people are manipulated through pride and ego. And I can't understand how people could allow themselves to be so easily manipulated on the whole. As you see here, the biggest genocide in human history didn't occur in Nazi Germany, but on American soil. 100 million Native Americans, and we have estimates, it might actually be more, were slaughtered and lost their homeland. And as we know, most of the people doing this were quote-unquote Christians. And it says, sorry if you can't handle the truth, but it is the truth. And this is, again, coming from the Catholic Church and then the other churches that came after it, because power corrupts. And people that get into power get used to a certain way of life. They view themselves as above everything else, everybody else. And it's really a sad situation. So one of the most brilliant minds that we've had says a human being is part of the whole, called by us the universe, or the multiverse now. Part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts, and his feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. The delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion, to enhance all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. So that's Einstein. And when we look at Native American culture, it emphasized the importance of living in harmony with the natural world. And not even Native American, we could go and extend this over to pretty much all of the indigenous people of the world. In both Americas, look at the Australian Aborigines as well, and the indigenous people, which were so slaughtered en masse by this system that is thousands of years old. Human beings have a kinship with the animals, plants, the land, heavenly bodies, and the elements. The human and the non-human are seen as parts of a sacred whole. human beings must maintain a right relationship with the world around them. So this is how the indigenous people were living until they were conquered by the system. Promoting harmony of all living beings with respect and kindness in turn will provide higher vibrations for the greater of good, love, peace, and unity with all who live upon this earth. And of course there was wars, and there's always been wars and battles between all people and indigenous people as well. But there was a reverence and a respect for the earth, and they didn't really view it as if they owned the earth. They viewed it as the earth owning them. They were on the land. They gave thanks all the time for all the blessings and bounty that came from the land, but they never claimed ownership of the land. They didn't view it as a possession. Quite the opposite. They knew they were individual cells in something bigger. We are in a turning point. So we are at the end of one age, and we're heading into a new age. And we're heading away from being a solar plexus chakra centered age, where it's all about the ego, the self, me, mine. And it's shifting, and we're going to turn into a heart-based, unity-based, compassion-based society. And obviously that's not going to be an easy thing. And obviously there's many upon the planet that will never accept that, because their hearts and their minds are too twisted with greed and with lust and desires for things, for possessions, to own, to conquer. We see nature is my religion, the earth is my temple. We have so lost that reverence for nature and that reverence for the earth itself. And, how many of us just throw trash out, in the middle of the street, a plastic bottle perhaps, that's never going to decompose. It's so sad that people can just do that. Just walking into the store the other day, I saw a young man. He was smoking a cigarette, and he just flicked it with disdain and just walked into the store. And I was just thinking, man, you are so lost. You just don't get it. And it's sad, because this is the world and this is the system. Many people will never get it, because why would they get it? They're not exposed to getting it. All they've been taught is this way of greed, and you always need more, must have more. Pantheism, the earth and all its life forms and processes are sacred. We belong to them and they to us. We are kin. We definitely have lost that. So what is reality? And I'm not saying that I'm pantheist, though I'm saying that I think we should have that view, that divinity is all through nature. And, source, God, prime creator, is expressed in so many different forms, and we should have respect and reverence for all of the beautiful natural surroundings that we still have and we can reclaim. So there's three views right here. You see paganism, divine is within nature. You see theism, the divine is beyond nature. And then we see pantheism, the divine contains nature. And we could get into, different lines of Hinduism, and there are so many different ones. It's just so expansive, as is the case with Christianity when it first started out as well. And of course, we still have so many different divisions within Christianity as well. And we've talked about the Gnostic view. We talked about the Essenes. And I brought up the fact that the Essenes were communal, and that they shared everything. Whatever clothes they wore, well, those clothes were theirs. But, again, they had a different viewpoint. Whatever anybody needed, they would always, do, and they'd help out others. But yet they didn't view ownership as being something that was needed. And they viewed it as they just simply shared. And, they shared equally. And so, Christ was thought to be in a scene. God is one, God is all, and we've lost that unity and that oneness. The universe is vast, yet we are not insignificant. Each one of us is just as much a part of the totality as a venerable tree or a bright star. The universe is a community of all beings. It's not a he, it's not a she or an it. It is us, and it's, in some lines of thought, it's beyond us, but it still contains us, but it's within us. And again, we could get into so many different forms of belief as well, even amongst the Gnostics, as I was talking about Gnosticism and how one strong line of thought amongst the Gnostics was that this is a fallen world. This is something less than perfect. Yet there were other Gnostics that didn't view it that way. And it's the same thing in Hinduism as well. And I brought up Kashmiri Shaivism as well, where in Kashmiri Shaivism, it's not thought that this is a fallen world at all. More that this is a place that we have created for ourselves to explore, just a different reality that has been created as something to simply experience and explore and to learn from and to test ourselves as well. And so this is from Ricardo Serrano. He's a QiGong master, a friend of mine as well. God is everywhere. As a QiGong teacher practitioner, I have experienced returning to oneness by being in the flow of Qi, feeling the Qi flow from natural energy sources such as trees, earth, sun, moon, planets, stars, and ocean through QiGong for healing, self-defense, and spiritual awakening. This oneness phenomenon, as being in the flow of Qi, is based from the Taoist Chinese medicinal philosophy of Qi cultivation by QiGong via body meridians. When nature's divine energy is felt as a divine presence, he feels himself at one with the universe through this felt presence of divinity. This feeling of oneness is explained by the Western God concept of pantheism. And again, we could give labels to anything we want. And labels are always going to be imperfect when you get down to it, because again, this is just verbiage coming from our less than perfect brains. And obviously when we're in this body, we're not completely aware of the greater totality, but we can experience it. And when you lay your hands on a tree as a QiGong practitioner at a certain level, you could feel the flow of energy. You could feel the flow of energy coming from the earth below the roots, going through the roots, flowing through the body of the tree, coming in from the leaves as well, coming down from the sun. You experience all these things. And it's blissful to feel the oneness, to merge with, say, the energy of a tree. We can merge with the energy all around us. And this is something that has changed my consciousness. I just can't look back at things the same way. That's when people talk to me about, certain beliefs that they have been conditioned with, that they just repetitively spout the same words. I just can't go there anymore because I've experienced that feeling of the oneness. I have experienced the feeling that there is way beyond my body. So I have no doubts. I just have no doubts, because once you experience something, you're changed. And this is the point of the Gnostic view. It's direct experience. It's direct knowledge. It's not memorizing something. It's not basically having faith even in something you don't fully understand. It's experiencing it for yourself, because direct experience completely changes us. That's the key. So man is the most insane species. He worships an invisible God and destroys a visible nature, unaware that the nature he's destroying is the God he's worshiping, or a part of it. And that's always hit me too. There are so many people coming up through the Abrahamic traditions that have such a disdain for the divine feminine. And it's completely sad. We need balance. We need harmony. We should regard all life forms with the deepest respect and compassion. They were not put here for us to use or abuse. They evolved in their own right and exist for their own benefit. And so, again, we could lay the blame really in our belief systems. And look at the belief systems we've been given. And ask yourself, does this feel right? And some will quote the Bible, they'll quote Genesis, and there's two creation stories in Genesis, and if you could see the difference between the two of them, and one we're told to eat of the fruit and the nuts and use the herbs as your healing, for your medicine. And the other one, we're told basically to dominate and go conquer the earth. And that has happened, and that is why we are so screwed up right now. That is why the earth has been so decimated and poisoned and polluted, because it's that mindset that has won out. That everything is here for us, go and conquer, and have no respect for the life forms that are here on the planet. And that's really sad, because things have been twisted on purpose, and things have been twisted so that the few can maintain control of everything. And that is what we have on the planet, and the divide's getting worse. So the idea of owning land, an old notion forged by the sword, is quietly undergoing a profound transformation. And I won't read this whole thing, but just to touch on it, however natural owning land may seem to our culture and the long sweep of human existence, it's a fairly recent invention. Where did this notion come from? What does it really mean to own land? Why do we in our culture allow a person to draw lines in the dirt and to have almost complete control over what goes on inside those boundaries? Where are the advantages, disadvantages, and the alternatives? How might a humane and sustainable culture reinvent the ownership connection between humans and land? And really, again, and this gets into some different belief systems, like the state owns everything in the communist, world. Well, got news for you. The state actually owns a ton over here in the West as well. 86% of Nevada is owned by the government, as well as many of the Western states. And you know what? These are states that have the highest concentration of gold and minerals, and that's why. You have no mineral rights in Nevada. So even if you own the land, the government owns the mineral rights. And also, since the Obama administration, there have been presidential decrees that have gone into effect that if they declare a state of emergency, if there was another terrorist attack or something like that, they could completely confiscate your land. Not only that, but they could put you to work. They could force you into labor. So don't think you own anything, because you don't own anything. It's not real. Really what is owned is all owned by the powers that be, by that small concentration of the most rich people in this world. You basically are just giving use of the land. We never own anything. And really, many would argue we never should. This system is completely evil and completely flawed. And the system is what has brought about what we have going on right now. So in some senses, we can only blame ourselves for allowing this small concentration of the riches of the rich to ruin nature, destroy nature, give us these earth changes that we're seeing and the poisoning of it. And, thank them for the glyphosate in your mother's milk. And, it just goes on and on. So this is out of world pantheism, revering the universe, caring for nature, and celebrating life. Most of the Romantic poets were nature-worshipping pantheists. And so this is just covering some of them: Virgil, Blake, Wordsworth, Keats, I should say, and Shelley, Goethe, Tennyson, Oscar Wilde. And there's some beautiful poetry in here as well. And we've lost sight in our culture with the bigger picture completely. We have so lost sight. And in some cases, you could view it as it's our fault, in that we're allowing ourselves to be controlled and to be manipulated, or feeling like we can't do anything about it. North American Indians, the spirituality of nature. Every seed is awakened, and so is all animal life. It is through this mysterious power that we too have our being, and we therefore yield to our animal neighbors the same rights as ourselves to inhabit this land, that Sitting Bull. And again, that whole idea that we have a right to ownership and a right to use and abuse the land is just, it's a system, mindset that has been completely pounded into our society through indoctrination. So animals were respected as equal in rights to humans. Of course, they were hunted, but only for food, and the hunter first asked permission of the animal spirit. Among the hunter-gatherers, the land was owned in common. There was no concept of private property in land, and the idea that it could be bought and sold was repugnant. Many Indians had an appreciation of nature's beauty as intense as any of the romantic poets that we were talking about. So this whole concept, it's Western in nature. It comes out of the Roman Empire, which has gone through morphs. It's turned into the Catholic Church. It still has dominated even throughout the Reformation. It's the same system. It doesn't matter if we're looking at different denominations. The same system holds sway. And it's conquered the indigenous people, and it's really exterminated so many of them because they hold the right concept in order for us to live in harmony and to heal the planet. And when we talk about like the Hopi prophecies as well, and all the Native American prophecies that talk about the end of this age, what comes about is going back to their system, where we're back to living in harmony. So, in my point of view, there's no way that this system is going to be the system of the future. And the system is what needs to change completely. Religion confidently proclaims answers about the afterlife, but has failed to sufficiently answer the questions of the here and now. We don't need help dying. The problem is we don't know how to live, especially living in harmony with each other. And, for those that are biblically orientated, the rich young ruler, Jesus answered, if you want to be perfect, go sell your possessions, give them to the poor, and you will have treasures in heaven. Then come and follow me. And so this was the rich young man that so wanted to follow him, but he couldn't give up his possessions because he loved them more than the love that he had built for Christ. And that's a sad situation. And do we think that the Catholic Church and these rich men are examples of Christ? Or Constantine's church, Constantine, who had the vision to conquer in the sign of the cross, and did that happen? Obviously that happened. Completely. And so is that truly the teachings of Christ? No, not even close. Not even close. And how would Christ be sitting here dressed like this, so pompous, arrogant, and full of it, when people are suffering like this kid on the right? Not in a million years. So Jesus said to them, watch out, be on guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist of an abundance of possessions. Luke 12:15. So we need to reconnect. Go to the woods if you can. Go deep enough that you don't see out into that other mundane world. Sit, listen, meditate, dream, and walk. And rediscover that connection to the earth itself, to our physical mother, because the earth is the mother of our physical body. And in that sense, we could take you could look at it in a dualistic point of view and say that the spirit comes from above. And, the mother is the mother of the physical body. And so we could equate that to Shiva and Shakti. We could equate that in so many different ways. But we are just missing the bigger picture here, that we are part of the whole. We are part of the whole. So we need to have respect for that, for all forms of life. And this system that we have been brought up and into, that has so indoctrinated us and controlled us, is banking on the fact that you're going to be greedy. It's banking on the fact that you're going to give in to your lusts and your desires and your cravings for the materialistic, superficial life, and not help each other out, and not rediscover the sanctity of all life around us. Because it's through our greed that they control us. It's through our greed that they control the ones that are controlling us. So again, it's about changing the system. So when we discover the unity that is the truth and the underlying reality of everything around us, can we really go back into that system and really be true to ourselves at the core? So my friends, as always, like, share, subscribe. I look forward to your comments. Thank you guys for your support on Patreon. Come and join us over there as well. And I find it distasteful, honestly, to ask for any sort of support monetarily, because I hate the system with a passion. I honestly do. But unfortunately, until we can change the system, we're in the system. And this is how they control us, because they could control our thoughts. They could control what's being put out there. They can censor things. This is part of what's going on. So we have to utilize their system while we're in their system until we could change it and have something new and better, which is coming. So keep that in mind, my friends. As always, God bless and namaste.